more and more owners are starting to see that they can provide a nice, clean, safe, working laundromat in all kinds of communities. And not only does it instill value in that community, but they also end up doing better business wise also at the same time.
You're listening to the Real Returns podcast, where we learn how real investments can make a real impact. Join your hosts, Andrew and Dan, as they share stories and interview business leaders on how real estate and other forms of investment can create meaningful change for individuals and communities around the world.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Real Returns podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Reichert. I'm joined with my co-host, Dan, the real man, Croce. Dan, how are we doing over there, man?
I'm doing really well. I have to be honest. I told Jordan before we recorded today's show, I circled this date because I'm excited about interviewing Jordan Berry. He does some things that I'm really interested in. He's an expert in the laundromat industry. But as I was thinking about kicking off today's show, I was thinking, well, since this guy's an expert at cleaning things up, I could probably tell a dirty joke, which I never get to do. Right? That's a joke in and of
Is that
itself.
the joke? Is
No,
that the
no,
joke?
it's
It was
not.
bad.
So my son, he's in kindergarten. He gets home from school the other day and he says to me, "Hey, Dad, did you hear about that new movie that called Constipated?" And I was like, you, what are you talking about? And he played it off for a little. He goes, "Yeah, it actually never came out."
You've taught him well. It's so good. I had to start laughing before the joke even happened just because I can picture Isaiah doing that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so that's
Little Zay.
that's my once in a very occasional while, the dirty, clean joke.
Too
Anyway,
funny.
we have Jordan Berry on the show from Laundromat Resource. Jordan, thank you for taking a part of your day to chat with our audience and educate us. I'm really eager to hear about how you think that the laundromat business can make an impact both in local communities and for entrepreneurs. So why don't you jump in and tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do and maybe some of your background prior to doing this also.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, you want me to follow that up? I don't know.
Hard to follow a poop joke.
It,
Yeah, I don't
it
even
shouldn't
know.
be hard, Jordan.
I'm
I'm sure you have a laundry list of jokes you could share with us.
Oh, no.
This is Dan.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I do have a junior high son, so I'm sure I can go with you on the poop jokes and fart jokes and stuff. But I won't. Yeah, so I was a pastor for 15 years and followed kind of the natural course of things. I mean, I think you think pastor and then you think laundromat owner after that, and you know what I mean? Like, no, you get to a point in life where you're like, you kind of just look around and you're like, how did I get here in life? Like, this is not where I pictured myself being when I was, an old man like I am now. So yeah, so I was a pastor for 15 years and, married. I've got 2 kids and, when they were young, like 1 and 3 years old or something like that, somewhere around there, I just got to a point where it was time, just the demands, travel demands and emotional demands of pastoral ministry with young kids and a newly stay-at-home wife at that point. It was just time to kind of make a shift, and it was more difficult than anticipated trying to figure out where to go from there. All my job experience was in ministry. I had a degree in ministry, and what do you do when you don't want to do ministry as a job anymore? So we live here in Southern California and own our house here. And I thought a great idea would be to rent out our house here in Southern California, take the money we have in the bank, go buy a condo on the beach in Hawaii and, do whatever, sell jewelry. Well, it doesn't matter. Like, we're in Hawaii, so who cares? Until our kids are school age. And then if we wanted to come back, we could rent out our condo and move back to Southern California and net gain condo on the beach in Hawaii. And my wife actually was like, okay, we could do that, or we could buy a laundromat. And so we bought a laundromat. And I still don't own any property in Hawaii to this day.
And so you're not selling Hawaiian jewelry either, because I would be a buyer.
I know. Listen, you're not the only one. There's a line. You need to get in.
I'll get in line.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I ended up in the industry.
And that was how long ago that you?
That was about a decade ago now. We bought
Okay.
our first one about a decade ago.
And tell us about that experience. I mean, you jumped in and you were immediately printing 7 figures from your local laundromat, or how'd it go?
Yeah. I retired about 3 months late. No, I'm just kidding. It was bad. It went horribly, horribly wrong. So the idea for the laundromat came from my wife's family friend who was working a high-tech job in the San Francisco Bay Area and making good money, but he was working, 60 hours a week or whatever. And he bought a laundromat and essentially he replaced his income and was working 5 hours a week. And we're like, well, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do that. So that was the plan. Make money coming in, very little time commitment. But I'll just gentle reminder, all my education was in ministry, all my experience was in ministry. I knew nothing about business. I knew nothing about investing. I knew nothing about real estate. I really knew nothing about pretty much anything. And so, yeah, made kind of every mistake in the book and ended up losing thousands of dollars a month for a couple of years. And the original intent was money coming in, very little time going out. And it was the exact opposite of that, which was I was spending tons of time trying to figure out how to turn this business around and not knowing what to do. And not only was no money coming in, it was going out pretty rapidly every month. So the super duper stressful time of life. And I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but when financial stresses are present, it just puts so much more stress on everything else, relationships, everything really. And so it was just it was difficult. It was a difficult time of life during that time. So I'll pause there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely something that Andrew and I can both relate to. I mean, we're in the apartment business, but I think from both of our own experiences, you look at numbers on an Excel spreadsheet and you think piece of cake, and then you get in there and do the thing, and there's human beings involved, and things break, and just everything happens that you don't expect. So I mean, that's real life. But how did you start to turn it around, or did you start to turn it around? And just kind of where's the story go from there?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was kind of sold the dream of, hey, you show up once or twice a week, collect quarters, and that's pretty much it. Just it prints you money. And so I spent a lot of money retooling the place, putting new machines in and all of that. I spent $0 on letting anybody know that I was doing any of that stuff. And this is I bought what we would call in the business a zombie mat, basically a fixer upper, and just had a really bad reputation in the community. And I spent all this money to rehab the laundromat, and I spent $0 rehabbing the reputation of the laundromat. Right. And so I was employing the Field of Dreams business model where if you build it, they will come. And to an extent, they did come, but not nearly to the degree that I needed it to be able to make money. So really it took, I got to a point where I was like just desperately searching for anyone who could help me. I couldn't find anybody to help me figure out how to dig my way out or what I was doing wrong. I've just felt like there's just something I don't know. But really kind of what ended up helping me get out was just being consistent for a long period of time and letting that kind of work its magic, if you will, slow magic. I didn't do anything to help it, but I was very like, all this money was going out every month and I was losing money. And so I didn't feel like I could put even more money out there to like advertise or anything like that to help build that business. And I was just naive. I just didn't know what to do. And I just kind of turtled up. Right. So it just took time of like consistently running a good business, keeping the place safe, keeping the people out who shouldn't be there and making the people who should be there comfortable and feeling good about it, having a good experience, keeping machines running, all that stuff. It just took time for word to kind of get out about it, and probably actually for people to cycle out of the community and new people to come in that didn't really know the previous reputation business.
Yeah. And I've got to think that has a huge impact on the community. We talk a lot about impact in our show here. We talk about the impact that it can have when we invest our time and our talent and our treasures into these businesses like you've done. And sure, it sounds like in the early days it was tough sledding, but you've taken this zombie mat, as you called it, and turned it around. Can you talk a little bit about how you think of impact in the business that you're running?
Yeah, one of the big things that I'm really trying to help our industry do is transform our reputation. Like
Yeah.
the laundromat industry just it doesn't have a great reputation. When most people think of laundromats, they think of probably a zombie mat, right? Something that's
Yeah.
half the machines work, it's kind of dark, it's kind of unsafe. Maybe there's homeless people hanging out, whatever the case may be. And to me, laundromats are like one of the few places remaining where communities still gather, and especially in lower income communities. And so laundromats are kind of uniquely positioned to be able to actually make a really big impact in a community. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people in our industry for a lot of years have not been good stewards of that and have sort of had this mindset of like, I'll put in the bare minimum to this business and people don't have anywhere else to go. So they'll come here and I'll make my money, which, frankly, I mean, that kind of used to be true. It's not as true anymore as
Yeah.
it used to be. And it's changing quickly. But beyond just the sort of making money, I think we have an ability to communicate to especially lower income communities that, that they have worth, that they're worth being invested in, their community is worth being invested in, that they are, I feel like by allowing a laundromat to run subpar, it kind of communicates the opposite of that, right? Like you're not valuable, you're not worth the investment or the time or the energy or the effort, the money investment. And I think that is starting to shift. That perspective is starting to shift in owners now, and more owners are starting to see that they can provide a nice, clean, safe, working laundromat in all kinds of communities. And not only does it instill, value in that community, but they also end up doing better business wise also at the same time. Yeah. So, I mean, I think impact is a huge part of potentially can be and probably should be a huge part of owning laundromats and a huge part of why I do what I do too.
I love that, Jordan. I think what's evident to me from the business that you've built, not only as a laundromat owner, but as an educator and a resource provider for aspiring entrepreneurs or people who are looking to chart their path to financial freedom, is I think you've done a great job of providing the blueprint. It seems like you've learned from your own mistakes. And so now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think part of your vision for impact is to help people avoid some of the pitfalls that you yourself experienced. So I have to kind of, I guess, just lob out this question to you. So a couple of years ago, I should have been one of your listeners. I'm a dabbler. So this is kind of post COVID, and there was a neighborhood laundromat for sale, and I was like, I do apartments. Like, I'm curious to figure this thing out. So I took a look, and thankfully, I decided not to pull the trigger at almost the 11th hour. And one of the things I realized was, even in the Burgo world, when Andrew and I first partnered, I realized, you know what? I'm not a very good operator, and I don't think I should be in this business if I'm not going to, think about the nitty gritty of rolling up my sleeves and operating. And lo and behold, I didn't buy it. Someone bought it. And 6 months later, the place was completely transformed. And I was like, oh, that guy did it right. I would have just sort of bought it and hoped to make it work, but it didn't really have much vision. So what are some of the first things that you tell people when they start to think about, wanting to get into the laundromat business? How do you explain to them that, hey, it's not just numbers on a page, but like you got to think about XYZ that you're probably not thinking about right now?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. And it's a good point too. Like I said, I think things are changing pretty dramatically. I think for decades, frankly, in our industry, like nothing changed. And over the last maybe 3 years or so, more changes happened than probably decades before that in our industry. And you're right. I mean, I think there's different kind of mindsets you can come into this business with, but more and more, I think if you come in the mindset of, I want it to be as easy as possible, as hands off as possible, which you can make it fairly passive actually, and you can do a good job even making it fairly passive. It's never going to be passive, but you can make it fairly passive. But if you come in with that mindset of like, I just want to make it as passive as possible and make as much money as possible, that's probably the wrong mindset. And you probably will not accomplish either one of those goals coming in with that mindset, right? The mindset more needs to be, how do I serve this community in a way that allows me to charge for the value that I'm bringing to the community, right? And that's how you end up setting up a business to where it's more on the passive side, if that's your goal. And you end up making more money that way too, if you come in with that sort of service attitude first. And I think that's not just true for this business. I think it's true for really any business. If you put, first and foremost, how you can serve your customers, your clients, it's just a recipe for success to do that.
I love that. And you've clearly been able to do that successfully. So talk to me. I'm curious. I mean, how do you think about, is your impact now mostly from the work that you do as a laundromat owner? Is that kind of how you try to move the needle by doing well? Or is it more from an education standpoint with your podcast and resources and, wanting to help people that are looking to take that step?
I mean, I'd say a both and, right? Trying to serve the communities that I'm in and operating in obviously is very important to me. But also, one of the things that's cool about having this platform that, I've got a YouTube channel and a podcast and, a website and all that stuff, community. One thing that's cool about that is that, one of the goals is to help people achieve financial freedom through laundromat ownership. And I love real estate investing. I may even love real estate investing more than laundromats, actually. However, there's a lot of people out there who are looking to leave their 9 to 5 or who are, chasing financial freedom. And you can achieve that through real estate. But when you're talking about those things, you're talking about cash flow. And the average real estate deal can't touch the average laundromat deal when it comes to cash flow. And, just, for some numbers' sake, the average laundromat deal, you're looking at a 20 to 25% return on your investment. And that's unleveraged. That's if you buy it all cash. So if you actually utilize a loan, those numbers can go up pretty dramatically. And that's just sort of like a base hit deal, no value add or anything like that. So you can see how if you're getting those kinds of returns on your money, you can actually leave that 9 to 5. You can hit your cash flow number much quicker than you can in just about any other vehicle that I know of. And especially in a way that you can set it up where you have relatively little time invested in every week for that. So I love trying to make an impact in people's lives and their families by helping them get in the business the right way. Because also, if you remember my story, you've got to do it the right way. This by and large is still a cash business, which there's a lot of good things about that. People are paying you cash upfront to do the work of doing the laundry themselves in a self-serve. Like, that's pretty crazy. But the flip side of that is it can be very difficult to pinpoint the performance of that laundromat, how much money is actually coming into that laundromat, right? So there's a lot of potential gotchas with that. So if you buy it the right way, it can really make a huge impact. And it does make huge impacts on a lot of people's lives, just by owning one laundromat, right? But even beyond that, I've sort of, expanded my vision a little bit in trying to help people, either get into this business the right way the first time or help them to, optimize their businesses and scale them, partially to help them and their families achieve their goals, financial freedom, or whatever it is, but also to help these communities that deserve a clean, safe environment to do their laundry in, right? And so I look at my platform as not just having an impact on the people who are listening, but also in the communities that are affected by the people who are listening. And I love that in some of those, I can play a real small part in impacting those communities without ever even having visited them.
I love that.
It's just really cool to see how many ways in which you can impact people with a business. You're impacting the investors or the owner of the business, the communities that it serves, the people that you're educating, just by taking your system and your process, helping people learn from your mistakes. And I can just see the ripple effects of those throughout the industry. So we really appreciate you sharing that.
Jordan, I just had one quick question probably before we head to the lightning round here before too long. But is it most typical for people who are getting into the laundromat business to buy a set of washers and dryers and a lease, or are they buying a building where there happen to be a set of washers and dryers? What's kind of the typical way for people to get into the business?
Yeah, I'd say both. And a lot of it depends on the market. A lot of for example, just kind of generalizations, but the coastal markets, real estate tends to be more expensive. It's less available. It's hard to find. Like I'm in, LA, Orange County here. It's hard to find like strip centers for sale that have a laundromat where you can buy both or standalone building. I have done that and I've bought laundromats with the real estate, but it's just a little more difficult and it's more pricey for sure. But a lot of like the sort of Midwest markets and stuff, a lot of times you're buying the real estate and the laundromat together. Not always, but more often than I'd say the coastal markets, right? So a little bit of both. But what I love about if there's an opportunity to buy the real estate with the laundromat, I think you are just firing on all cylinders in terms of wealth creation, right? Because again, you're benefiting. I have what I call the wealth tripod, right? Which is your cash flow, your equity, and tax benefits, right? And laundromats knock it out of the park with cash flow. Real estate, okay, with cash flow, decent. Real estate, you have, especially commercial real estate, which is what you'd have with a laundromat, has the ability to force some appreciation through, drafting an appropriate lease, maybe a triple net lease, charging top of the market prices to your business, that kind of thing, where you can really force some equity there. And then both laundromats and real estate obviously have great tax advantages to them there too. So if you can buy the real estate and it makes sense, I mean, the numbers still have to make sense for you, but if you can buy it and it does make sense, I'm a huge fan of owning both together because they can work really well together.
Awesome. Well, fascinating. Thank you, Jordan. I'll hand it off to Andrew here. I feel like we got a great education on the business side, and he'll get to know you personally.
Yeah, let's do it. So, Jordan, what would you say is your biggest win, personally and professionally, whatever you want to say?
Oh, man. Well, I guess my biggest win is snapping up my wife. I feel like I need to say that, even if it wasn't true, but it is true.
She's definitely listening. So.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah, totally. No, yeah. I mean, I do think that's a huge win. And obviously, the kids I got, huge wins. My kids they're really awesome kids. I have no business having kids as great as I do, but I do, and I'm grateful. And then, more on the professional side, actually, I feel like the fact that Laundromat Resource exists and anybody pays any attention to it at all is a huge win, because coming from where I kind of half joke, but actually I'm not really sure that I'm joking, that I was the world's worst laundromat owner there for a while. And I may be true, but because of that, I've learned a lot of lessons. I've learned a lot of very expensive lessons, and I've been able to share what I've learned with other people. And I've been able to create a platform where other people can share the lessons that they've learned. So, I mean, that just feels like a huge win to me, just to have that both on having an impact side, but also just personally. Like I've learned so much, from the people I've gotten to know from having the platform. It's been a huge win all the way around. That's not very lightning. Sorry. I'm going to go more lightning.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
Honestly, I appreciate the context, and I love that you gave both a personal and professional example. What would you say is your favorite movie?
Gladiator.
Oh, that's my favorite movie. I knew I liked you.
We need to have a viewing party. That's what we should do.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I like it.
How about favorite food?
McDonald's French fries.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Just the French fries? Like
Yes.
just the French fries. Okay.
Yeah.
Love
Since
it.
I was a kid.
Yeah, they do them right. How about a current growth edge, a way in which you're trying to grow personally or professionally?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the interesting things, you catch me at an interesting time in my laundromat journey. Actually, I'm down to one laundromat at the moment, and may actually end up selling that one, but with the intention of I've got a couple partners, and we're launching a fund, and we're going to go out and try to do a big roll up and buy a few hundred laundromats. That's the goal. Nobody's done that before. So I feel like there's multiple growth edges along that process, but that's sort of the trajectory that I'm heading right now, which is exciting and a little scary too.
The best things in life are, right?
Right.
Exciting and a little scary.
That's right. Yeah.
That's awesome. And how about any A+ content you're taking in these days? Podcasts, books, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Well, obviously this podcast, number one,
Appreciate
a very, anything I talk about beyond this is like a distant.
Just way
2, 3,
distant
4.
second,
Yeah. It's
sure.
like real small. Yeah. You know, a book I'm reading right now that is really good, and maybe it's just me, but it's called The Road Less Stupid. And it's a super, super good book.
So
a lot of really good perspective, but also a lot of really good questions to kind of think about. And a buddy of mine recommended it to me, and I tried not to take that personally, but it is very good.
Here is something you should read.
This book was written specifically for you.
That's awesome. It's a great book. Cool. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show, learned a ton about the work that you do and how you think about impact among, your various stakeholders, certainly impacting the people that are in the communities in which you're serving, definitely impacting the owner operators that are running these laundromats, and really with the education that you're doing and the fund that you'll be launching, spreading that impact, something I get super excited about. So if folks want to connect with you, how can they connect with you?
Yeah. So laundromatresource.com is a website, and we got a podcast, YouTube, social media, all Laundromat Resource. And my email is Jordan, JORDAN @laundromatresource.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jordan. Thanks for being on the show. Appreciated hearing your story and excited for you in this next leg of your journey.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Real Returns podcast. We hope that you learned something new about how you can invest to make a lasting impact on those around you. Please be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you listen to your podcasts, leave us a review, and share about us on social media. We hope you will join us for our next episode, where we will be continuing the conversation around impactful real estate investing.